because the days of a security company buying more and more tools just because they need things to play with are over. And the average Fortune 1000 CISO has 150 like products in their ecosystem. And they want to bring that down. They want to bring that down to 50 or 30 or 20 or whatever, something more manageable. But for a few years there, a lot of CISOs were just buying things almost as a security, as an insurance policy for their board. So bad things happen. They could say, well, look, we have 150 security tools. Like what else can we do? We tried everything. We literally have everything.
Welcome to Securing the Future podcast with your hosts, Jesse Meadors and Ramin Lamaie, where we discuss the latest cutting edge technologies and how they are affecting the security industry. This is the show where industry expertise meets in-depth discussions.
All right, we're back for another episode of Securing the Future podcast. I am Jesse Meadors, your host, and my co-host, Ramin Lamaie.
Hey, everyone.
One day I will get you excited on the intro, Ramin.
This is my face.
I know.
I don't get too much more excited.
I have the enthusiasm. You keep it real. It's just the way we do it.
I did change it up. I didn't say what's up, so.
That's right. You're getting more formal now, so that's nice. Well, we're excited. We have a really exciting guest that we're going to be talking to today. Hank Thomas. Welcome, Hank.
Hey,
thanks for being on the show.
Yeah,
so Hank has
thanks for joining me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hank has an amazing background. Served our military as an intel officer for many years, moved into the cybersecurity sector there and was former NSA cyber ops. And then in 2016, actually started a venture capitalist firm focused specifically on investing into cybersecurity companies. And so we're going to talk all about the vendor landscape, what's going on in this new market with AI being so heavily focused on, and how can we improve the security of all the different pillars of this industry with new, exciting, innovative technology companies. So really excited to dive into that, Hank. Welcome to the show, man. And I guess maybe as a starting point, anything you want to touch on with regard to your firm and where you do a lot of your investing would probably be a good starting point, just so we can understand the portfolio of companies that you work with. And then we'll dive into some questions and go into it.
Yeah, I think our focus now is the AI hype and how to spot it, how to spot frauds. Like that's what we spend a lot of time doing now, but there's definitely to your point, there's definitely a lot of interesting stuff happening in AI. It's just like security in total, weeding through the landscape of potential snake oil to find the gems that are out there that are going to be needed for the future. But yeah, we 2016 started Strategic Cyber Ventures here in Washington, DC. Honestly, I call myself an accidental venture capitalist because this is not what I was intending to do. But I did learn a lot about when I left the government world and went to the commercial cybersecurity world, and we were building people's security programs. I was no longer using government, like classified government tools to do things. We were using the vendor landscape that we're here to talk about to some extent today. And I was scratching my head saying, where does all this stuff come from? Like who comes up with these ideas to build these tools these ways? Oh, there's this whole Silicon Valley ecosystem, and you've heard about it. This is 2016, me saying this. Why are they building it this way? What's driving these requirements? In the military, everything's requirements based. So there has to be like a requirement somewhere. It goes through the DoD procurement cycle. And 10 years later, a destroyer gets spit out or whatever, or a fighter plane gets spit out. But in the commercial landscape, it was, let's just venture capital, throw some money at it. Somebody builds a thing and solves a problem. And then the next problem pops up and someone builds another thing. We thought we could do that better, maybe as security practitioners, finding things that were mapped to real requirements and real problems, and maybe like a traditional multi-strat VC that was investing in everything from like next generation diapers to cybersecurity tools. Like we want to just be focused on the security tools and not the diapers or the gambling company or whatever, like just security. So 8 years later, we're still doing that. And I guess you could argue we're part of the hype cycle because we've thrown a lot of money at cybersecurity, but we also don't do as much investing as everyone else. We, being a single LP fund, we have a couple other investors, but mostly one large investor. It gives us the luxury of really finding things that we're super passionate about, investing in them and helping them grow, as opposed to just spraying and praying money in lots of different directions and being right only 10% of the time, which is like the traditional VC model.
Yeah, no, it's helpful to have that background. Any companies that we would be familiar with that you guys have invested into that are now pretty well known in the industry?
We've had 3 exits. We sold
Wow.
a company called Security, which is a deception technology company from Israel. We sold that to a company called Commvault, which is a publicly traded company.
Oh, yeah.
We had a company called E8 Security. We sold that to VMware, which is obviously a very large company. And we just sold a company called Polarity to a cybersecurity company called ThreatConnect. ThreatConnect is a threat intelligence platform that sort of ingests lots of different threat intelligence feeds, and that either you already have or they bring in for you, and then helps you aggregate that data and use intelligence, like how the military uses intelligence to make actionable decisions faster. So a lot of people for ThreatConnect, obviously a lot of people for VMware. A lot of people broader outside of cybersecurity, most people haven't heard of most cybersecurity startups.
So
On top of that, most of them have really terrible names that start with Psy or something like that. And so they all sound the same. I know when I talk to my mom about these things, she like can't keep any of them straight because they have terrible names. Like I think cyber is notorious for that.
Does your mom know what you do? I don't think my mom knows what I do. I think she thinks I install antivirus.
She tries really hard to know what I do. Like she knows that we do cybersecurity. That's like the extent.
That's it.
Yeah.
Keep it
Yeah.
simple. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mom, I do cybersecurity. That's all you got to
Yeah,
know.
that's
And
right.
now
That's
it's done.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh, all right. Well, let's get into
Hank,
more of
I
the
have a-
questions. Oh,
I
go
have
ahead.
an
I'll let you
initial
go
question
first.
for you.
Yeah.
Do you guys have a portfolio strategy in terms of the companies you target or you're trying to complete in terms of your investment? Just to understand, like, is there a strategy in terms of like capabilities or type of companies you guys look for, just to understand what does that look like?
I mean, we look at the 4 corners of cybersecurity, as I call it, and if we narrow ourselves down to like one of the Gartner categories or something, it really limits our ability to invest. So, and also it would be, you're going to miss out on great opportunities, maybe in emerging categories and places. So I say we look at the 4 corners of cybersecurity. If the strategy is probably more around looking at what I call the titans of cybersecurity are lacking, and then investing in places where they're lacking. So, the big guys that are ultimately going to be the acquirers of these companies, potentially, how are they going to want to differentiate themselves? How is CrowdStrike going to want to differentiate itself 3 years from now, 5 years from now, when our companies mature, and investing in things that are going to be ready to be that mature thing for CrowdStrike to acquire 3 years from now, or 5 years from now, or Microsoft to acquire 3 years from now, or 5 years from now. And then on top of it, I mean, then the other part of the strategy is really more than ever, and cliche in venture capital, but it really comes down to like really good founders of startups. Because if you're not able to take feedback and pivot and just do whatever it takes to be successful, and you're just married to one idea and you're not flexible off of that idea, you're going to be a terrible startup founder. So finding people that have that drive and that flexibility to maybe like completely abandon their original idea a year after starting it and starting something new and being totally okay with that. So assessing that up front is really important. And then not overpaying for stuff, because you're never going to make any money. I mean, I'm mission driven. I want to like solve national security issues through venture capital, but it's also a business, and I have to pay myself a salary. And that salary comes from successful exits and investors' dollars, and they want a return on their investment. But lucky for me, my investments are also mission driven, national security mission driven too. So it allows us to do both things at the same time, feel like we're contributing to the security of America, but also like investing at the same time and making money and helping the American economy grow through like just super awesome differentiated startups, generally outside of the usual areas you think of startups coming from. Because it's hard for us to compete in Silicon Valley or Israel. We compete more in Columbus, Ohio, or Washington, DC, or New Jersey, not necessarily like bastions of like cybersecurity startup world that people typically think about. But there's great ideas.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is interesting. I love that you are super focused in and also differentiating yourself to invest into companies that maybe didn't have anybody there that would fund them and back them. And you're like, oh, you have a great idea, but you're in Ohio. Like, we can help you here, right, to grow. And of course, some of that challenge of finding the right talent, but then most of the companies can do this remotely, right? So you can aggregate and bring a talented team together, especially if it's more of like a SaaS product, depending on what they're building. That's interesting.
Yeah.
What are you seeing? So Hank, there's a lot of problems to solve. And actually, we're going to be recording another podcast here pretty soon on the security operations kind of sector of the pillars and what are unique things that are happening there with somebody who used to be a CISO for SentinelOne. But I'm curious to hear what your viewpoint is on this, because you're analyzing a lot of the bigger companies. You're looking at what are their gaps? What are the things that they need to think about innovating in the next 3 to 4 years? And then looking for companies that, like you said, already have that that they could be acquired. So that's an interesting perspective. What are some of those problems that you think need to be solved that you're finding some of these companies are solving with their technology?
I think whether it's AI or it's really pretty easy in security. It's detecting threats faster than anybody else and helping you eliminate them. I mean, like, that's what it comes down to in today's world. CISOs have vendor fatigue. They have alert fatigue. So helping them reduce alert fatigue and find threats faster. And not just saying like, hey, there's a threat over there, and not giving them a solution to like it's not just threat intelligence, which is a commodity at this point. It's like being able to shoot that ray gun at it and kill that threat for them, helping them solve that problem and kill that threat, eliminate that threat, block that threat faster. And it's just going to get faster and faster with AI, like machine on machine, AI on AI fight that's taking place. The bad guys aren't following the rules. They don't have a global network of ATMs they have to run. They don't have like customers. They're just out there. Their customers, either the dictator that runs their country that they're doing this job for, or the crime syndicate that they're working with. And they want to just make more money faster, or they want to steal more secrets faster. And we have to be right. They have to be right once. We have to be right every time. So beyond that, I mean, that's easy to say. And people are like, have been trying to do this in security for a long time, but it's also about segmenting data and data protection and saying like, okay, the bad guys are probably going to get in. So how do we like really build this house of mirrors, this supermax prison that makes it more difficult and raises the cost of doing business for them when they get here? So it's not just about the ray gun shooting at them and killing them, but it's about making their lives really freaking hard and being like, okay, you know what? Next time I'm not going to attack Bank of America. I'm going to go to Wells Fargo or whatever, because their security is not as good. I'm nothing against Wells Fargo. I'm not. Yeah, they both have great security. Bank of California versus Bank of Nevada, whatever. Finding that you don't want to be that soft target. So we invest in things that help you detect threats faster and eliminate them. I mean, that's really what it comes down to now for us. And that could come from any type of new technology. All sorts of new things are coming out that a lot of it's AI driven and that are going to allow for that, if that makes sense. It's a simplistic answer, but it's really pretty easy. Like if it doesn't help do that, it's like the special forces mentality versus the regular army mentality. I worked in the regular army, and then I worked in support of special forces units through my time up at Fort Meade, building like cyber stuff for special forces. Versus the regular army has this long procurement cycle, and they typically get things that work, but they're not like, they're not the premium stuff. The special forces guys, if it doesn't help them kill people or break things faster, they're just like, get out of here. It's just a way, it's heavier. It's weighing me down. If the buttons don't allow you to button your uniform in freezing cold, they don't want it. Like they don't want any of that stuff. And so we invest in things that are essentially like special forces grade cybersecurity for the world's most like premium customers, the banks of the world. Like they have the best security. They're the most forward leaning. They have the most to lose. They have the biggest budgets. So yeah, sorry, I'm passionate about that.
I can hear it.
You can tell. Hank, in terms of like how companies see the different categories of security products that they need, right? So they know that they need antivirus, right? Or you call it EDR, or whatever you call it these days, right? One of the challenges that I see with security startups are they don't always fit into existing like functionality verticals, right? So they're, just a little different. And then they go into their own bracket of what their service is. Being on the acquiring side of security vendors for the past 20 years, that's always been a challenge, right? Because if you're not replacing an existing technology, you're asking for new dollars. And that's generally a hard sell for company. What are your thoughts in terms of that, right? Because I do see a lot of new companies that are mixing and matching different capabilities. And when I talk to them, a lot of times what they do is niche, and it's not really replacing an existing service that someone else is offering. It's like an augmentation, right? It's an addition to that. And I see that those are a lot more harder from my point of view and my experience to sell because it's additional dollars that companies have to go and get. What are your thoughts on that? Because I think the convergence that we're seeing with AI and with cloud, security services are all reshaping themselves all the time and moving towards different categories in terms of what they offer.
Yeah. Yeah. It's something we have to look at very early on because you're right. It's super difficult to go in with a product that's not already in an established category where somebody's going to eventually hot swap you into that in the future. We invest in things and people can like hot swap they're already doing something with what we're doing. Because the days of a security company buying more and more tools just because they need things to play with are over. And the average Fortune 1000 CISO has 150 like products in their ecosystem. And they want to bring that down. They want to bring that down to 50 or 30 or 20 or whatever, something more manageable. But for a few years there, a lot of CISOs were just buying things almost as a security, as an insurance policy for their board. So bad things happen, they could say, well, look, we have 150 security tools. Like what else can we do? We tried everything. We literally have everything. We bought every tool out there. And we have insurance, but people see through that now. They don't want to waste time with managing that vendor ecosystem. Occasionally if you only invest in things that can like totally rip and replace one for one, you're never going to find like that totally new thing. So you got to have a strategy to go after those existing dollars already at a minimum. Even if it's like a new category, you got to very early on as a startup say, okay, I know we're calling ourselves Lightning product 123, but really it's Thunder product 456 that has all the budget. So what is our messaging going to be to unseat Thunder product 456? And we're going to have to be able to do all the things they can do faster to detect threats faster or whatever. If you don't have that strategy, you're going to have lots of cycles early on trying to sell something to a CISO that doesn't even know what you're talking about. So those days are gone. We've got a CISO board. I talk to CISOs all the time. You guys talk to CISOs all the time. That's the Wild West of like going and hearing some carnival barker on a box talk about his new security product and then you buying into it. Those days are gone. So you can see it in the sales cycles now. They're slowing down. They're not buying less stuff. They're just taking more time to figure out what it is that they're buying.
It's interesting because we do help companies better understand what their requirements are, which a lot of times I'm noticing is like the gap that I see from the acquisition side. I'll give you an example. We're working with someone right now where they want monitoring service, but you ask them what kind of monitoring service, right? And that gets very granular very quickly in terms of what they want, right? So having that experience and knowing how to define your requirements, and your background coming from the government is very structured for that, right? So you're very good at saying, all right, before I even go acquire something, here are my 100 requirements that I need to achieve. And I think that you just don't see a whole lot of that discipline these days where people are just looking for solutions and not fully knowing what they need and how it ties to other products and services that they already have, or integrating in terms of like how they're going to manage workflow and all that. So it is an interesting area as we see the vendor landscape continue to shift and evolve. How do we help add value to those engagements and make sure that the customer is more getting what they're looking for versus getting sold something they didn't need?
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Yeah, it sounds like when it comes to the vendors that you, or actually the company that you're looking to invest into, you've focused in a little bit more on where your strength of your background is, right? It's like the information to provide to a CISO or leadership team and security team to be able to have actionable plan of action to go after these threats faster. There is, like you said, there's those different pillars. So that's interesting. We'll hone in on that a little bit more. So as you're choosing a good founding company to work with, what are some of the key things that you have found? And I think we may have, hit on this a little bit already on companies that are successful in founding a cybersecurity company in the areas of domain that you focus in.
Founders, I touched on it a minute ago, comes down to flexibility. They might, so like take, for example, a company, they'll remain unnamed. Well, I should name it, but I won't. That is probably the most successful company early on that we've invested in. We invested in it this year. And I'm using it now as an example of over 8 years of doing this. They seem to be, knock on wood, doing everything right. And it has nothing to do with me telling them what to do, really even having to suggest anything. It's the first time I've seen a company the founder is just so driven to be successful that he's surrounding himself with the best salespeople and firing people fast if they're not working out, not being emotional about any of this stuff, and just making the hard decisions fast. And really, like, his leadership style is, if we're doing something, the hard thing, I'm going to be right there with you doing that super hard thing out there on the sales, in the booth at the conference, grinding it out with everybody, the first to get there, the last to leave, like that military mentality, like I'll eat last after all my troops eat kind of stuff.
Well,
and he's partnered with lots of other really good investors. So if you see, another signal is like the types of investors that are going after a company. If it's just you talking to them, it could just be that they're in a weird place that doesn't have access to a lot of venture capitalists, or it could be they're a terrible company and it's a terrible idea. Lots of other people have passed on it, and you're like the one looking at it. Just surrounding himself with excellence, and never says something's too much. No introductions too much. He wants more and more. It has his sights on the corner of the cybersecurity market that he wants to take over. He wants to take it over. And he said it from day one. I want to take over this corner of the cybersecurity market. And I believe him. I fully believe him at this point. And I've only invested in this company for the last 6 months, and we're just growing by leaps and bounds. So, like, a vague playbook for what you were asking. But yeah,
I think we gathered some of that even just from how you describe that story. And that's always sometimes the most helpful is to hear the story. That's great. Thank you, Hank. Well, one of the questions we always ask on this show, because we are focusing on the future in this landscape, as you talked about earlier, is cutting through the noise and BS of what is really a valuable use of the kind of move that we've understood we can now use AI and machine learning for when it comes to generative AI and large language models, building bots and those things to enhance a tool. What are you seeing, Hank, of ways of doing that in the future that are going to really make an impact on this industry?
There are a lot of companies out there right now that are basically building AI copilots for security that eliminate the menial tasks for security teams, that allow generally very stretched, hard to find talent in security to focus on higher level stuff and the really hard problems, which I think is going to give us an advantage in security. So taking the various different types of AI and applying it towards the types of problems AI can actually help you solve right now, which are menial, essentially like low wage tasks in cybersecurity, and ultimately replacing entire roles on security teams for people that can help you triage alerts and things like that. And then that, to me, is where people are seeing the biggest bang for their buck with AI right now. And I think that once people gain confidence with AI and some of these more basic tasks, you'll see AI start to take on roles that people said AI would never take a role in security. Because big banks, I'll just use them as an example again, they're not going to allow the big decisions like shutting down their business because some computer is going to tell them they need to shut down their business. But they're still going to have many humans in the loop that are going to be like, okay, we got to shut down all the ATMs in Kazakhstan today because the computer told us to. Like they're like, we're going to lose millions of dollars if we do that. So we're going to like thoroughly analyze this, talk to our board about it. I think you're going to see machines on those bigger decisions a couple of years from now. Not now, but they're going to have to gain people's confidence on that front. I also think you're going to have some level of additional levels of offensive, we'll call it offensive security, come into play to really turn up the heat on adversaries beyond what we're doing right now. I mean, all that stuff is where offensive cyber operations is essentially like illegal in the commercial sector. I think the federal government is going to have to step in and start to protect the commercial sector a lot more than what they're doing right now. And people with authorities are going to have to essentially hack back, if you want to call that, in certain cases to more frequently to shut down crime syndicates that are, plaguing us right now in the commercial space.
Yeah.
And I think
I'm seeing also on the recruiting. Oh, sorry about that. I was gonna say on the recruiting side, because I work with a lot of interesting companies, we're seeing a huge push and an increase in the number of companies that are supporting government efforts and providing the innovation on the private sector side, but then partnering with different organizations within the government, like the DoD or what have you. And I think there's got to be this place, Hank, and you just talked about it really, where both sides need to partner better. And we know our strengths, right? So like if commercial sector can't attack back, right? But if government partners better with commercial from that perspective to protect, and then commercial partners better with government to innovate, I think we have a good long-term future to come against some of the foreign nation states that are way ahead of us because they don't play by the rules.
Yeah. It's got a long way to go, but I think we're moving in the right direction. And what was it? Ronald Reagan said, like the scariest 4 words in government is I'm from Washington and I'm here to help. So if people are like, I don't know if I really want that. Like they don't want government in their business. But if we could show that like it's a partnership, partnerships have to work both ways. Otherwise it's not a real partnership. So you got to build some trust there. And DHS the Department of Homeland Security has some really innovative security programs to push the security operations forward to like the state level and to partner with industry. And I think they're making some strides in those areas.
That's great. Ramin, any last question there?
Sorry, go ahead, Jesse.
No, I was going to ask you for your last question as we wrap up the episode here.
Yeah. Love to get some guidance from you, Hank, on startups that are thinking about how AI is effective in terms of a capability in their products. Can you give a good example of where you're seeing AI be effective in terms of a startup that you guys have looked at or one that you guys are supporting, and then one that's not effective? I think that would be helpful just to understand where a good use case and where there's a bad use case from your experience.
Yeah. Good use case, the digital risk protection space. So beyond the kind of menial tasks I was talking about earlier, where, we can eliminate the triaging of information, that things that AI can curate data and help security teams go through that, comb through data. In the digital risk protection space, using AI to take down malicious websites, fake websites, identify deep fakes, identify things that are impacting your brand, or could potentially be malicious copycats of your brand that are attracting people to them and infecting them, ultimately impacting your brand. So AI in the digital risk protection space, I think is here right now. It's happening. We have a company called Commvault that's doing that. They're helping you find fakes that impact you, whatever they might be, whether it's somebody impersonating your CEO, whether it's a website impersonating you, your company. Finding it faster and taking it down is something that AI can be very helpful with. A human doing that is like next to impossible. Where it's not so effective right now, I would say in the world of incident response. So there's like AI kits that are I've seen pitches on this where people are using AI to assist in the forensics of an investigation post breach. AI, it'll get there, but right now there's so many like so many guidelines and rules and regulations that are required for a human investigator to like figure out what happened, that I don't think AI is quite there yet. And it's not going to be admissible in court. So if you're going to need to like collect evidence and have it admissible in court, I think people are gonna be like, oh, so the bot collected all this evidence and now it's sharing it with us. Like the trust isn't there yet. I think it'll be there at some point in time.
You bring up a good point. I was advising this company last year when they were in stealth mode, but they were essentially creating a platform around automating incident response and creating a single dashboard that collects all the data, and it automatically maps your sequences of attack from entry to all access. And one of my feedback to them was, this is great, right? I love this, right? I come from the blue team side, and I've done investigations for years, and getting the right data is always a challenge. But the challenge that I could see them facing as they grow is, you're showing this view. How do I trust this view, right? I don't have access to your algorithm or anything underneath to know that this is the true events that happened, other than, to your point, me manually going through and applying those skills that are earned through years of experience to then put together the puzzle, right? Otherwise, it's like a blind trust, right? I'm blindly trusting that this is all correlated right and nothing else happened, right? It's a hard stretch today, but to your point, as the technologies evolve and they get better and they, go through scrutiny and they're able to withstand that, right? It's only going to get better at that point. But today, that's a really good point. Would that help you in court?
Yeah. I mean, you can't really cross-examine AI right now. And
Too much hallucination.
but you will soon, right? Like, I think you will soon. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Hank, thanks so much for being on our show. This was great. Really helpful to hear your perspective, and exciting to see all the success that you and your company have had. We're rooting for you as you continue to make a difference in protecting our nation. And I love the mission behind what you're doing and empowering younger entrepreneurial founders that just want to make a difference and are driven to do it, and helping them get there. That's probably really exciting every day for what you do. So thanks for all that you do and for taking some time to be on our show today.
Yeah. I have the best job in the world, and I love talking about it. So thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Yeah.
All right. All the best. Take
Yeah.
care.
Thanks. Yeah. Thanks. Nice meeting you guys.
Nice meeting you too.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Securing the Future podcast with your hosts, Jesse Meadors and Ramin Lamaie. If you enjoyed, make sure to hit subscribe and leave a rating.